title is called, I Feel You. I feel you, brother. I feel you, sister. I feel you. And what does that mean to you? I feel you. You see somebody going through something. You see them going through, and you can empathize with it. So you say, I feel you. We often say that, but do we really actually mean it? Over the past couple of weeks, I've been, actually the past month or so, since the beginning of May, listening to several of the graduation speeches that have been going on. And part of the reason I was curious to see how many of them actually talked about the young graduates using their imagination to project what they expect to experience in their lives moving forward. And now we're talking about graduates at all levels. I mean, we've got graduates in preschool going to kindergarten. They're graduating to a whole new level. You know, no longer are they necessarily going to always be getting snacks and taking naps. Now it's time to stay up all day and actually raise your hand and do what you're supposed to do in class. They're graduating. We're talking about kids that are graduating from elementary school, going into middle school. It's a whole new level of homework, whole new level of involvement. We're talking about children that are graduating from middle school into high school. All right, the game is serious now. The game is serious. Now you've got to pay attention because what you do makes a difference on your college scores, on whether you're going to get into college. And then ultimately we hear the graduation speeches for the children who are graduating high school and going into college. But that's not last, and that's not the least of them all. The last, the biggest and the brightest, is the graduation from your last formal schooling. Whether it be college, your bachelor program, whether it be getting your master's degree, whether it be getting your doctorate degree, because now is when you are taking the opportunity to take all that education that you have learned and put it to use in the world. And so someone comes up and stands before this class. They come up standing before this class to give a word of encouragement. They come to stand before this class to give them something to think about, to hold on to as they take this next step into this new life that they're about to endeavor into. And so I was curious about how many people would talk about using your imagination. And true, many of them were what I expected. There were several speeches that talked about you're going to fail, but you're not really failing, you're learning a lesson. Okay, a lot of people talked about that, and that is true. And a few people talked about that your life is what it's going to be based upon your thinking. Yeah, we know that, that's true. But then I ran across something that gave me pause. That gave me great pause to stop and to think. And yes, it was about imagination, but it took imagination into a whole new level. It took imagination into that, I feel you. Because it talked about empathizing with our fellow human beings on this planet. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. But first, let me give you our scripture, which is directly related. And our scripture comes from Isaiah, the 1st chapter, the 17th verse. And it reads, "Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow." This is the ultimate Bible verse for I feel you, because it's talking to every one of us. And it's asking us, for every one of us, to reach out and help and be a part. Relieve the oppressed. Today I want to talk to you about learning to value imagination in a broader sense. Imagination is not only the unique human capacity to envision that which is not, which is what we talked about for the month of imagination, and which we'll probably continue to talk about, because that is the foundation of invention and innovation, that we know. In its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity, it is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experiences we have never shared. Think about that. How many have ever read or heard the story of Anne Frank? I mean, almost everybody should, even the kids, okay? Now, you've heard this story about Anne Frank. Anne Frank's a little girl, right? And she's this little girl that was hiding out from the Nazis because she was Jewish. And she and her family lived in this secretive room. And she writes a diary talking about all of her time in there and the hiding and what went on. And her journaling is so detailed that you can feel her. You can actually relate to being there with her. You can empathize with what she's going through, with what's going on. But hers is not the only story that allows us to do that. There are so many others. And as I ran across the speech that J.K. Rowling, who did the Harry Potter series, she gave a speech on imagination. And in her speech, she reflected on her experience working for the African Research Department of Amnesty International's headquarters in London. How many know anything about Amnesty International? Anything at all? Just a little bit. Okay, what they do is they are a world organization that try to help those that are seeking some help from political prosecution, much like we find in a lot of the African nations, in any place really. But she writes specifically about this, about how during her time there, she would read letters that were written by people. I mean, read letters that were written on anything they could get their hands on, and they would write these letters real quickly, trying to get them out before they would get caught, because if anyone saw them with these letters, they could get killed. Not only could they be killed, but their whole entire families could be killed and tortured. So she read these letters that talked about men and women who just wanted to get the word out of what was happening to them, because nobody knew. Anybody heard about Darfur and what happened there? I mean, there was a whole nation of genocide going on there. And the world stood by for a while being ignorant of it, and then they stood by for a long time and did nothing about it. But how many of us felt that in our hearts? How many of us felt in our heart some pain for what these people were going through, and imagine if it was us and our family that was there? Because it could have been me. It could have been you. We were just blessed to be born here and now instead of there and then. Not only did she read the letters of people who were trying to inform us of what was happening, but she saw photographs of people who had disappeared without a trace. You can use your imagination for what happened to them. She also read testimonies of the torture victims, saw pictures of their injuries. She read handwritten eyewitness accounts of summary trials and executions. You know, the kind of trials that you walk into the room, okay, you're guilty, we're gonna saw your head off with a dull blade in the corner square right now. But I didn't get a chance to speak. We heard you. That's the trial. It's not like here where you're innocent before proven guilty, that you have to be proven guilty. So these were all the things that she was learning. She worked with ex-political prisoners who had been displaced from their homes. They fled in exile. We have so many people like that here in this country that have come here because this is a place of asylum. This is a place that is fair. This is a place that is just. This is a place that you have a chance to be who you are, and what you believe in is not something that's going to get you killed. All right, maybe there are some places that might happen, but it's not the common thing. But there are some countries where that is the common thing. She met this one particular African man who had been tortured so much that he was mentally ill from all that he had endured. He trembled uncontrollably. I'm sure that loud noises and people coming up on him suddenly were probably totally fearful for him. And she noted how he seemed like a small, fragile child. And I'm sure this is a man that's like 6 feet tall, but he seemed like a child because of the energy that he carried from being so tortured from everything that he had gone through. And she was given the job of escorting him back to the underground station. And she said that the man, when he got there, wished her future happiness. Now, how do you come up with that after all that you've gone through to have enough to give a well wish even to somebody else? That's the type of people that she ran into at Amnesty International. She found that every day she was reminded of how incredibly fortunate she was. And each of us should be reminded each and every day of how incredibly fortunate we are to be here in this country, to be able to have a good meal every day. How many ate something today? Everybody eat something today? All right, you are among a small percentage of people that get to eat something every day. How many of you had a bed to lay on last night and sleep? You're among a small percentage of people that have a bed to lay on every night and go to sleep. How many of you in here have been tortured lately? I'm not talking about by your spouse, making you do things you don't want to do, but I'm talking about tortured for what you believe in. Nobody. We don't have to endure that. But there are millions of people that do every day. Now, I know that this is not an incredibly uplifting lesson today, but the hard lessons are the ones that we need to hear every once in a while. The hard lessons are the ones that we need to hear that help us step out into action, that help us reach up and take the hand of our brother and lift them up out of where they are and to do something. J.K. Rowling said that she learned more about human goodness at Amnesty International than she had ever known before. You see, Amnesty International mobilizes thousands of people who have never been tortured or imprisoned for their beliefs to act on behalf of those who have. The power of human empathy leading to collective action saves lives and frees prisoners. Even if you can't go, you can give to that. Ordinary people whose well-being and security are assured join together in huge numbers to save people they don't even know and have never met and will never know. Unlike any other creature on the planet, humans can learn to understand without having had experience. You don't need to put your hand in the fire to know that it burns, right? You seen somebody else do it and they said that was hot, you believed them, you didn't have to touch it? Exactly. But that's how we are. We can think ourselves into other people's places. Of course, this is a power that is morally neutral. Some people use it to manipulate and control other people, just as much to sympathize. And a lot of people prefer not to even exercise their imagination in this way ever at all. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to know. I 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 can't see it. I can't hear it. No. People do that. They stay in their comfortable ignorance. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born any other way than they are. They can refuse to hear screams or peer inside the cages of those who are being tortured. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. They can refuse to know. I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except I don't think they have any fewer nightmares than anybody else. Choosing to live in narrow spaces leads to a form of mental agoraphobia. And if you don't know what that means, that's a fear of small places. And that brings about its own terrors. I think the willfully unimaginable see more monsters than you and I, because they're trying to hide in the dark. And they're often more afraid. What is more, those who choose not to emphasize, they enable the real monsters to go on. Because they choose not to feel, see, or do something. If you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. Do you want to be a part of the solution, or do you want to be a part of the problem? I think I know the answer. For without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, if we choose to ignore it, we collude with it through our own apathy. The Greek author Plutarch wrote, "What we achieve inwardly will change our outer reality." We talk about it all the time. What you achieve inwardly will change your outer reality. If you are sitting there thinking about and achieve a full picture inwardly, you can expect to see it manifest in the outside of your world. So that's an astonishing statement, yet proven 1,000 times a day in our lives. I started off with a mental picture of one thing last week, and, well, it's manifest today. Happens like that. And he knew that sneeze was coming before it ever even came out. Bless you. It expresses in part our inescapable connection to the outside world and to each other, because we are all connected. We talk about that all the time. There's no separation. We are all one. But how much more are you likely to touch other people's lives? Do you vote? I mean, even though you may not be able to go as children to the polls and vote, you get to speak your voice. I don't know how many times I've listened to young children speak about something that they've learned in school that they've become passionate about, and speak to their parents about it, because sometimes their parents had no clue. And it may alter the way that their parents may vote, or it may alter the way that their parents may do something. So nobody's excluded from this. Everybody plays a role. Everybody has something to do with it. It's also about the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bear on your government has an impact. You know, there are people that will write a letter every day to their congressman, make calls every day. There are people who do something about things that they actually believe in to make a difference, because these are your elected officials. They want to hear from you. They're supporting their constituents. If there's something that you're passionate about, I've seen so many people like get a petition, a letter, or send something out, call this or call that. These are the very things that are impacted by even when our radio personalities get involved. My point is, you can make a difference. Each and every one of us has the ability to make a difference. We can make an impact on this world today. That is not only our privilege, but it's also our burden. If you choose to use your status to influence and raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful, because that is more popular, they do have all the money and the material possessions, but to identify with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourselves into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people whose reality you have changed. You don't need any kind of special magic to change the world. J.K. Rowling in her Harry Potter novels talked about magic, but you don't need any of that kind of magic. You don't need any of that. We carry that power that we need inside of ourselves. We have the power to imagine better, to imagine a better us, because there's always room for improvement, to imagine a better home, to imagine a better school, to imagine a better friendship, to imagine a better relationship, to imagine a better community, to imagine a better city, to imagine a better country, to imagine a better world. You have that power. All you have to do is step up and exercise it. Now, this is a speech that went out to graduates, but I believe that this is a speech that should be given to everyone. I believe that this is something that we all need to know and we need to take into account. So when you're sitting there bored, I feel you. When you're sitting there impassioned by what I'm saying, I feel you. When you're sitting there hanging on the words, placing them into a place in your heart and mind that you know can transform the world, I feel you. InSpirit family, feel somebody today. Stand up and make a difference. Donate your love, donate your time, donate yourself. But don't stand in the dark corners of your mind saying nothing. Peace.